When Saudi Arabia first pulled the curtain back on the line in 2021, the world didn't see a city. It saw a vision torn straight from pages of futuristic fiction. A shimmering 170-kilometer ribbon of mirrored walls rising from the Red Sea coast, promising homes for 9 million people inside 2 endless vertical corridors, all powered by clean energy, untouched by cars, streets, or smoke. Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman introduced it as a crown jewel of Vision 2030, a bold attempt to loosen the kingdom's dependence on oil and thrust it onto the global stage as an engine of innovation. For a moment, the world held its breath. People were fascinated, mesmerized, even hopeful. Then the excitement faded, and the questions began. Could something this enormous actually be built? Could a project of this scale survive the desert's brutal climate, the financial strain, and the physical limits of engineering? Only a few years later, those doubts are no longer hypothetical. According to recent investigations by the Financial Times, the megaproject that once promised to reshape civilization has slowed to a crawl. Engineers and insiders now warn that the line may never reach the skyline it imagined, and might die out before a single resident ever calls it home. Today, we're uncovering the unraveling of one of the most ambitious projects humanity has ever attempted. This is a story of how the line went from a global sensation to what some now call the biggest megaproject failure of the century. Before we continue, hit that subscribe button. It's the best way to support this channel. The line was meant to anchor NEOM, a sprawling $500 billion region along the Red Sea, featuring cutting-edge resorts, new industrial districts, and even a floating city. Officials long insisted the project would stretch the full 170 kilometers by 2030, unfolding in phases as the kingdom expanded its futuristic frontier. But in early 2024, Bloomberg reported a dramatic shift. Instead of 170 kilometers, only about 2.4 kilometers are expected to be finished by 2030. And instead of housing 1.5 million people in that first phase, the projection has collapsed to fewer than 300,000. Weeks later, the Financial Times revealed something even more alarming. More than 20 people directly involved in the project confirmed that its momentum has nearly vanished. Many sections don't even have completed foundations. What was once imagined as a living, thriving city for 9 million people now teeters on the edge of becoming nothing more than a stranded monument, a colossal reminder of ambition outrunning reality. One of the biggest red flags has always been the timeline. In 2022, NEOM officials confidently predicted that residents would start moving in at the end of 2024. By the following year, the city was supposed to host 130,000 people and welcome 1 million tourists. In a rush to meet those jaw-dropping promises, contractors were instructed to begin building before the designs were even finalized, a violation of basic engineering principles. The result? Conflicting layouts, constant redesigns mid-construction, mismatched components, and staggering waste. Even if everything went perfectly from this moment on, experts say the city would still be decades away from partial completion. And that's before considering the size of the task itself. The line is essentially 2 skyscrapers running side by side for nearly 200 kilometers, each 500 meters tall and 200 meters wide. The materials required are beyond imagination. Engineers estimate that just 20 of the planned 135 sections would demand as much concrete as France produces in an entire year. To finish the full length, the project would need an unprecedented supply of global resources, including roughly 60% of the entire planet's recycled steel, and a construction force of up to 500,000 workers. This isn't ambition anymore. This is physical impossibility. Global supply chains, already stretched thin, could never support such consumption for a single development. And even if Saudi Arabia managed to acquire the materials, the financial and environmental prices would be staggering. Money, ironically, was supposed to be the easiest part. The Public Investment Fund, fueled by decades of oil wealth, pledged to bankroll this gleaming city of the future. But as the true scale of the project emerged, the numbers exploded into something no one had prepared for. Executives were first told the line would cost $1.6 trillion. Within months, new estimates soared to $4.5 trillion, nearly twice the kingdom's entire GDP. That's not a cost overrun. That's entering the realm of fantasy. Falling oil revenues have put further pressure on the PIF, drying up liquidity. And without substantial outside investment to share the load, the financial model collapses. which is exactly what's happening right now. Foreign investors simply don't see the project as realistic. Some have even described it as a high-stakes display of overconfidence rather than a serious long-term development. Doubt is spreading inside the government as well. Without global partners, the project has become a financial sinkhole, consuming billions with no clear path to recovery. For a nation seeking credibility with international markets, this is a major setback. And yet, ironically, the people who worked on the line don't question whether it could be built with unlimited time and money. On paper, the engineering is theoretically feasible. But what works in theory doesn't always survive the real world. A continuous vertical city in one of the harshest deserts on Earth creates endless engineering headaches. Mirrored surfaces expanding in extreme heat. Sandstorms scraping and dulling the panels. Moisture buildup across the long corridors. Airflow, waste management, and water systems struggling across hundreds of vertical meters. Even if the structure stood tall, would it be livable? How would sunlight reach the lower floors? How would millions of people cope with living in a narrow, enclosed environment stretching endlessly in one direction? Many architects fear it may feel more like a human tunnel than a futuristic paradise, a place where the horizon disappears and the architecture itself becomes psychologically suffocating. Behind the glossy renderings, critics say the line doubles as a massive public relations spectacle, one designed to distract from a difficult truth. While the project is marketed as rising from untouched desert, the region is home to long-standing communities, including around 20,000 members of the Huaytat tribe. In 2020, the government began efforts to clear the area, forcing people from lands they had lived on and farmed for generations. But social displacement isn't the only hidden cost. Though the line was advertised as a zero-carbon oasis, the reality of building it tells a different story. The production of its concrete and steel alone would emit tens of millions of tons of coal. Transporting materials to the remote site requires fleets of fuel-burning trucks. Satellite images now show large areas carved apart for roads and worker camps, slicing through a previously untouched ecosystem near the Gulf of Aqaba. In trying to create a model city of tomorrow, Saudi Arabia may be eroding one of the last undisturbed desert environments today. For the Crown Prince, the line represented far more than architecture. It was a declaration that Saudi Arabia could reinvent itself, break free from oil dependency, and build a new global identity for the 21st century. Now, as the project falters, the credibility of that dream is being tested. NEOM was supposed to symbolize transformation. Instead, it is becoming a warning. Other Vision 2030 projects have already been scaled back, including Qiddiya and parts of the Red Sea tourism plan. The message is becoming clear. Economic diversification requires more than bold ambition. It demands time, resilience, and steady governance. Those are things no royal decree can accelerate. The downfall of the line isn't rooted in technological limits, but in human overconfidence, in the belief that a city can be compressed into a corridor, that people can be mapped like data, and that national economies can simply leap beyond their own constraints. The line won't vanish overnight. Pieces of it may continue rising. Some sections may be repurposed for tourism or research. But many planners now quietly admit that the original vision, a fully realized 170-kilometer vertical metropolis, will almost certainly never materialize. Yet even with its future hanging in the balance, the line continues to spark global conversation. Supporters argue that every great leap in human history began as an impossible idea, a vision too bold for its time. They point to skyscrapers once deemed unrealistic, cities built in deserts against all odds, and nations transformed by sheer determination. But critics counter with an equally powerful truth. Innovation collapses when it outruns its foundation. A dream without logistics becomes a spectacle. A blueprint without patience becomes a burden. And a vision that ignores people, their homes, their environment, their psychology, ultimately loses its purpose. As heavy machinery sits idle in the desert sun, and as scaffolding stands half-built against the horizon, the world now waits to see what becomes of this radical experiment. Will Saudi Arabia scale the project down into something achievable, something human, something grounded? Or will it cling to the original dream, pouring more wealth and hope into a vision that may never find life beyond the renderings? Inside the kingdom, the stakes are enormous. Vision 2030 is not just a plan. It is a nation's identity, its promise to its own people and to the world. And whether the line rises or falls will echo far beyond the steel and concrete abandoned in the sands. For now, the desert holds its breath. The cranes have slowed. The workers wait for new orders. And the mirrored walls that were meant to reflect the future now stand as faint reminders of a dream that may be fading. Perhaps, in time, pieces of the line will evolve into something practical, research hubs, tourist attractions, or compact smart districts. Perhaps new technology will someday revive the original vision. Or maybe, decade from now, travelers will stumble upon fragments of its foundations and wonder how a project so colossal ever came to exist and how it all slipped away. Because in the end, the story of the line is bigger than architecture. It is a story about ambition, limits, and the fragile space between imagination and reality. It forces us to ask hard questions about the cities we want to build, the sustainability we seek to achieve, and the price we are willing to pay for innovation. It shows us that progress cannot be commanded. It must be earned, tested, and adapted. As the sun sets over the empty stretches of the NEOM desert, one truth becomes clear. A city designed to redefine the future has instead become a reflection of the present, a symbol of the challenges, contradictions, and complexities that shape our world today. Whether the line ultimately rises or falls, its legacy is already carved into the sands of Arabia, reminding us that even the greatest visions must face the reality of the world they hope to transcend. What was once imagined as the world's first linear megacity may instead end as a vast skeleton of unfinished steel, a monument to ambition unchecked by reality. And the dream of redefining urban life may ultimately fade into the sand, swallowed by the desert it sought to conquer.